It's that time of year again, and we have come up against the fall festivals. It was time to do another festival edition video for our festival edition playlist that we have on YouTube. So, man, this is at least the third, maybe the fourth time we've cycled through what's called the high holidays. The high holidays are the fall festivals on the Jewish calendar. I don't know if you can hear all that construction outside. I can't do anything about it, so if you hear that, my apologies. But this is that time of year, and man, we've been doing this playlist now for years at a time. And you know, a lot of times, I think the last couple years, I have shared in our festival videos a bunch of like rabbinical wisdom, particularly things I've learned through Rabbi David Foreman at Aleph Beta, and there's such good reflection and deep and thorough and dense teaching there. And so I've been sharing those things the last couple years. This year, what I thought I would do is just, we'll pull way back. We'll get, these are just going to be some of Marty's thoughts and me speaking from my family's experience and observations and observance. So there won't be a whole bunch of profound rabbinical wisdom in this discussion today. It'll be pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But we have coming up what in the past I've called Rosh Hashanah, head of the year, and I have been corrected and lectured in the comments about calling it such. The Bible never calls it Rosh Hashanah. That's more Jewish tradition. It's become the Jewish New Year. In a lot of ways that came from the Babylonian Talmud and what they might call Babylonian wisdom, and which really kind of became the dominant perspective that Judaism has operated out of. So I don't particularly see anything wrong with that, but I have started trying to call it Yom Teruah. Biblically speaking, in the biblical text, that's its name, the Festival of Trumpets, the Day of Trumpets. Teruah would be trumpets. And so the biblical conversation and the rabbinic conversation have this dialogue. I think we actually talked about it last fall, between which one is the head of the year. There are these two different conversations. Nevertheless, here's what we do as a family every year at Yom Teruah. We have our shofars, and we blow this all throughout the day on Yom Teruah, and we celebrate. There's supposed to be, in rabbinic tradition, they say 100 shofar blasts. Now, if I were a part of a Jewish assembly and went to Jewish synagogue, they would blow the shofar at the synagogue service an awful lot of times, and it's full of that. I'm a part of an evangelical community, so I don't go to synagogue and we don't worship in that kind of space, but we do that in our home with our own Jewish observance. So we spend all day taking turns, blowing the shofar and having a ton of fun, and it's a sound of jubilation. In fact, one of the words for jubilee, yovel, also is a word that gets used for trumpets, but not the word that's used here. But nevertheless, we blow the trumpets and we have celebration and fun. And one of the things that you're doing, this is the beginning of those high holidays. It's the beginning of the fall festivals. And in the biblical world, these fall festivals sat on either side of the fall harvest. So you had a spring harvest and you had a fall harvest. In the middle, you had summer, where you would work the fields and you would do all the things that would get ready for the fall harvest. But the Jewish festivals, 6 of what we might call the 7 biblical festivals, if you wanted to identify it that way, 3 in the spring, 3 in the fall, both of them connected to harvest seasons. The festivals were connected to the agricultural reality of their world, and so the festivals were connected to the seasons of harvest. And in a lot of ways, what you were celebrating and what you were reflecting on and what you were partying about is God's provision and the way that he took care of you, both in the springtime harvest and now in the fall harvest. And so you come to Yom Teruah kind of looking back over this entire agricultural year, right? From out of the rainy season into the spring planting and then the spring harvest. And then you replanted your fall crops and you worked the fields all summer. And then you come to the fall harvest, and now you've seen a whole year of God's provision through agricultural, like your physical sustenance through your agricultural reality, and now you're about ready to head back into the rainy season. That rainy season will bring you back around to the springtime. You will plant your crops. You'll have a springtime harvest and your springtime festivals. You'll work it in the summer. You'll come all the way back around to this spot. And so Yom Teruah is, in one respect, there's a couple different ways to look at it. In one respect, it's about looking back over a year of production, over a year of provision, and celebrating those things. And so one of the things that's happened, and who knows how many centuries this has been taking place in Jewish observance, but one of the things that they do today in the Jewish world, and my family celebrates, is we will have apples and we dip it in honey. One of the things you're talking about is the sweetness of the year. So one of the greetings of Yom Teruah is Shana Tova Tekatiev Vetachatiem, right? May you be inscribed and sealed with a good year. So as you reflect back over a year of provision, we don't live in a world, a lot of us, some of us do, some of you do, but a lot of us don't live in a world driven by harvest. Our calendar looks a little differently than it used to. The rainy season doesn't impact us the same way that it used to when you were a farming culture and a society built around agriculture. But in their world, they were really looking over that whole year, and they were thinking about all the ways that God had blessed them. And so you take, every year at Yom Teruah, we take apples as a family, and we dip it in honey, and we celebrate and we give thanks. We express gratitude and celebration for the sweet things, the good things, the beautiful things, the wonderful, joyful, sweet things that God did in us, through us, around us, in our family, the ways that he provided, and we celebrate that together. And that's one of the things, like when you talk to my kids, and my kids are growing, they're in their teenage years now. And so their opinions change. I know at one point, I don't know what they would say today. You'd have to ask them. At one point, my kids would say this was one of their favorite holidays. Like one of their most precious memories of celebrating festivals is sitting around this table as a family and sharing the good things that God has done. And so it's a simple practice. And I know that when we do this, like we'll usually have we'll get something great and put it on the smoker. Like we'll have a really good meal. Like we'll go all out, we'll get out the good bottle of wine. We're going to get the good stuff, and we're going to eat, and we're going to stuff ourselves, and we're going to eat, drink, and be merry, and we are going to celebrate. And sometimes when you're in the midst of Yom Teruah, I don't know, I've had this sense of like, is there more? Like, should I be doing more? Like, this feels like it's like apples and honey, and yet we've done this every single year for my children's lives, and it's stuck in their psyche. Which reminds me that sometimes it's the simple practices done in faithfulness. It's the simple practices done every single year, right? It's not all that big. Like it's not rocket science. It's apples, it's honey, it's sweet things. It's talking about the things where a lot of us do this at Thanksgiving, and yet don't underestimate the power of those practices. I've just gotten done with my sabbatical recently, and one of the things that I did on sabbatical was I tried to learn from not just my Jewish world, but from my Christian world. I tried to learn from the Ignatian spiritual exercises, the Jesuit tradition, one corner of Catholicism, a more contemplative approach to prayer and to celebration. And one of the things that they taught me over the course of 10 weeks was what they called savoring the graces. Savoring the graces. So at the end of every week, you would reflect on the past week and you would savor the graces. What were the things that God did? What were the things that God said to you? What were the things that God showed you? What were the high moments of your week that you can just pause, write them down, give gratitude for, and savor those? And I can tell you that in the middle of the week or at the end of the week, like when I was in the middle of savoring the graces, I thought, this is cool, this is fun, this is enjoyable, I get it. But I wasn't like, wow, this is blowing my mind. But I will tell you that after 10 weeks of savoring the graces, it has done something to me It has changed a perspective, a posture. It's given, I'm able to access gratitude more easily. Here's my point. These simple practices done with intention and connected to the story of God. So if you were to do this at Thanksgiving, if you connect, like we all get together with our families for Thanksgiving, and a lot of our families will share things we're thankful for around the table. You do that every single year, connected to the way that God has blessed us, connected to prayer and thankfulness, and we're going to share the things that we're thankful to God for. You connect that to the God story, to the God narrative, and that will do something to you. And your kids will remember and pick it up. And it will do something to the way that we understand who God is and how we relate to him. Who is God? Who are we? What is God doing in the world? And how are those things connected? So no profound rabbinic wisdom, no midrash, no crazy deep layers of chiasms and all that stuff. Just a simple practice of apples and honey and sharing the things that we're grateful for and slowing down and pausing just enough that it sinks in, even if for just a night, just a moment. And so, I think about this past year, and I think about how thankful I am for sabbatical. I just got done with a beautiful time, a time that I don't usually get every year, but I got it this last year, and I'm thankful for that sweet thing. And obviously the list could go on. You have a list, right? What are you thankful for? When you look back over a calendar year, the things that God's doing in your life, has done in your life, you can sense the things that God is doing and will do in your life. What are the things that you're grateful for? Give voice to that. Do it with others. Do it with the people that are closest to you. Do it with your family. And do it over and over. And don't make it huge, great. Just make it intentional. Make it small and intentional and meaningful. And watch what God does with that long, slow obedience in the same direction. All right? So with that, I say, Shana Tova. Tekatia Vetzahatiam. Shalom. Hag Sameach.